For 3 years, the gorilla painted the same face every single day. Not a landscape, not a pattern, a face. Always the same eyes, always the same expression. Always placed in exactly the same position on the canvas. 812 paintings. All identical. The staff had shown the paintings to every expert they could find. Nobody could identify the subject. And then there was the other mystery. The gorilla had arrived at the sanctuary alone at 3 years old with no history, no records, no known family. Nobody even knew if he had ever had a mother. Then a researcher took photographs of the paintings to a wildlife database in Nairobi. What she found there answered both mysteries at once, and left everyone unable to speak. Before you watch, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss another touching story like this one. And write in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Day 1, 1096. Keeper Nadia Ose arrived at Casey's enclosure at 7:43 a.m. before the rest of the sanctuary staff had started their shifts. She always came early now. She set her coffee on the ledge outside the observation window and pulled out her notebook. Inside the enclosure, Casey was already at his easel. He was always already at his easel. The 23-year-old Western lowland gorilla stood with his back partially to the window, brush in hand, studying the blank canvas in front of him with an intensity that Nadia had watched 1,095 times before. She opened her notebook to a fresh page and wrote the date. Then she pressed record on her phone and set it on the ledge. She had footage of all of it now. Every session. Every painting. 3 years of documentation that she had organized into folders, labeled by date, cross-referenced with behavioral logs. She had shown the footage to 4 different behavioral specialists. None of them had been able to explain it. Casey reached for the black paint he always started with black. He loaded the brush carefully, the way he always did, tapping the excess against the rim of the cup twice before lifting it to the canvas. Always twice. Never once. Never 3 times. Twice. Then he began. Nadia watched and took notes as she had watched and taken notes 812 times before. He started at the top, a rounded shape, built up in layers, the black deepening with each pass of the brush until it had a quality almost of texture. Something dense and specific. Not abstract darkness. Darkness with intention. Below it, 2 areas of concentrated shadow, placed with a precision that still unsettled her no matter how many times she watched it happen. Because they were always in the same position. Exactly the same position. She had overlaid photographs of 50 different paintings on top of each other in an editing program. The shadow areas aligned perfectly every time, within millimeters. Then the broader shape below. Brown and ochre, built up slowly, the brush moving in short, careful strokes. And then, last of all, the detail that had bothered Nadia since the very first painting she had ever watched Casey complete. He changed brushes, picked up the smaller one he kept to the right of the others, dipped it in the deep reddish brown, and added the concentrated area of color at the center of everything he had painted. Always last. Always careful. Always placed with a deliberateness that was completely different from the broader strokes he used for everything else. As if this part mattered most. As if this was the thing he was most afraid of getting wrong. Casey stepped back. He looked at the painting for a long moment. That expression crossed his face. The one Nadia had been trying to name for 3 years. Not satisfaction, not relief. Something heavier and older than either of those things. Then he set down his brush and walked away from the canvas. Nadia closed her notebook. Same one? James, her colleague, had appeared beside her with 2 coffees. Same one, Nadia said. James handed her a cup and studied the painting through the glass. Still think it's a face? I know it's a face, Nadia said quietly. "I've known since painting 47. The structure was unmistakable once you had seen it enough times. The rounded shape at the top. The two shadow concentrations that could only be eyes. The broader middle area. The reddish-brown at the center that she had spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to interpret before finally accepting that she simply didn't know what it meant. A face seen in low light. A face remembered rather than observed. A face painted from the inside of a memory rather than from life." "Whose face?" James asked. It was the question Nadia had been asking herself for 3 years. "That's what I need to find out." She had been thinking about this for weeks, now. Quietly, without telling anyone, because she wasn't sure yet whether it was a reasonable idea or a desperate one. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to an email she had drafted twice and deleted twice. Today, she was going to send it. The email went to Dr. Priya Nair at the University of Nairobi. Dr. Nair maintained access to a comprehensive database of African gorilla records compiled over 30 years. Photographs, field documentation, population studies, rescue records. If the face in Casey's paintings corresponded to any documented gorilla in the research literature, Dr. Nair would be the person to find it. Nadia attached high-resolution photographs of 12 paintings selected from across the 3 years. She typed 3 sentences. "I work at a sanctuary in Rwanda. Our gorilla Casey has painted the same face 812 times over 3 years. I'd like to know if this face looks familiar to you." She pressed send before she could delete it again. Dr. Nair's response came 4 days later. It was a single line. "I need to come to your sanctuary. When can we meet?" Nadia stared at the email for a long time. Then she looked up at the storage room door at the end of the corridor. 812 canvases behind that door. 812 identical faces waiting to be named. She typed her reply. "Come as soon as you can." Dr. Nair arrived on a Tuesday morning, 11 days later. She was quieter than Nadia had expected, more contained. She shook Nadia's hand and asked to see the storage room before anything else, before meeting Casey, before seeing his file, before any context at all. "I want to see them first," she said, without knowing anything. Nadia opened the storage room door and stepped aside. Dr. Nair walked in and stopped. The room was floor to ceiling with canvases, stacked in careful rows on shelving units that Nadia had installed 18 months ago, when the collection had outgrown the available wall space. 812 paintings, organized by date, the oldest at the back and the most recent near the door. The same face, 812 times, at every angle the shelving allowed. Dr. Nair walked slowly into the center of the room. She turned in a slow circle, looking at the paintings surrounding her. Her expression was unreadable. She walked to the nearest shelf and pulled out a canvas from near the middle of the collection. Examined it closely, replaced it. Pulled out another from the back, much older, one of the first 100. Examined it, replaced it. She stood very still for a long moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a manila folder. She held it without opening it, looking at the paintings around her. "How old is the gorilla?" she asked. 23. "And he arrived here with no family history." "Nothing. His file says origin unknown, found alone, at 3 years old. No records from before the Kinshasa Rescue Center." Dr. Nair nodded slowly. She opened the folder, removed a single photograph, and placed it on the empty shelf in front of them. It was a wildlife research photograph. Black and white, slightly grainy, taken with a long lens in field conditions. Dated in the corner with a handwritten notation, 23 years ago. It showed a female gorilla, photographed in 3/4 profile. dark eyes with a particular depth to them, a broad, distinctive brow, a quality of expression that was immediately, unmistakably individual, the way a face is individual when you have seen it enough times to know it. Nadia had seen this face 812 times. She felt the floor shift slightly beneath her. "That's her," Nadia said. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "That's the face he's been painting." "Yes," Dr. Nair said. The word fell into the silence of the storage room like something dropped from a great height. Nadia looked at the photograph, then at the painting on the shelf behind it, then back at the photograph, the eyes, the brow, the proportion of every feature, identical. "Who is she?" Nadia asked. Dr. Nair looked at the photograph for a moment before she answered. Her name was Amara. She was a western lowland gorilla documented by a conservation research team in the Virunga region of the DRC. Part of a small family group monitored between 25 and 20 years ago. 20 years ago, the research team lost contact with the group. Rangers investigated. They found evidence of poaching. 2 adult gorillas confirmed killed. The rest of the group dispersed or lost. In the ranger's report, an appendix note, a juvenile male found 3 kilometers from the kill site, several weeks after the incident. Severely malnourished, non-responsive, estimated age 3 years. Transferred to a rescue facility in Kinshasa. "Casey," Nadia said. "Casey," Dr. Nair confirmed. They stood in silence, surrounded by 812 paintings of Amara's face. "He was 3 years old," Nadia said, "when it happened." "Yes. He's been here 20 years. Yes. And every single day for the last 3 years, he's been painting her face," Dr. Nair said. Exactly as he remembered it. 20 years later. Nadia walked slowly to the nearest painting and looked at it. The eyes, the brow, the reddish-brown center she had never been able to interpret. And suddenly, she understood what the reddish-brown meant. It wasn't abstract, it wasn't decorative. It was the warm color of Amara's face at the center of the portrait, the place where the light caught her expression most directly. The feature Casey had been most afraid of getting wrong. Her face. Exactly her face. Painted from 20 years of memory. "He doesn't know her name," Nadia said softly. "No. He's never known her name. No. But he's known her face." Dr. Nair looked at the paintings surrounding them. For 20 years, across everything that happened, through everything he survived, he held on to her face and never let it go. Nadia felt tears sliding down her face. "Why now?" she asked. "He's been here 20 years. Why did he start painting her 3 years ago?" "How old is he?" Dr. Nair asked. 23. In wild gorilla populations, males become fully mature silverbacks around 20 to 22. That's when they would begin forming their own family groups. She paused. It's possible that reaching that milestone, the age when, in another life, he would have been starting his own family, triggered something. A resurfacing of what he'd lost, of who he'd come from. Nadia looked at the paintings. 812 mornings of Casey standing at his easel, painting his mother's face from a memory 20 years old. Not because he was trapped in trauma, but because he was afraid of forgetting. Because she was all he had ever had, and he had lost her before he even knew what loss was. Not her name. He had never known her name. But her face. Always her face. Dr. Nair returned the following week with Dr. Felix Uma, a specialist in art therapy with traumatized primates. His approach was simple. Sit beside Casey and paint alongside him. Not to change what Casey was painting, but to expand it. While Casey painted Amara's face, Dr. Uma painted the same face surrounded by trees, sky, light. Amara not suspended in darkness but alive in a world. In week 2, Casey picked up a second brush for the first time in 3 years, and added a small figure beside Amara's face. Himself, pressed close against her side. Week 6, he painted sky above them, blue, wide and open, and in his final painting that month, the small figure beside Amara was turned slightly outward, facing the blue above her, still hers, but beginning, at last, to look forward. 6 months later, a 2-year-old orphan arrived at the sanctuary, withdrawn, refusing to eat. Casey approached her enclosure and began to paint. Not Amara's face, hers. The young gorilla crawled toward the mesh, pressed her small hand against it. Casey pressed his hand against the other side. She began eating that afternoon. What Amara had given Casey across 20 years and 800 paintings, Casey was now giving forward. From mother to son to the next lost child who needed to know they would not be forgotten. Did this story touch your heart? If yes, write yes in the comments. Casey painted his mother's face 800 times over 3 years because he was afraid of forgetting her. Do you think the people we love stay with us forever, even when they are gone? Yes or no? Write your answer. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Thanks for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.